Welcome back, everybody. Eric here. Today, I want to talk a little bit about competition versus combat. All right, and I know this is a subject that gets thrown around quite a bit, and people talk about it and provide their 2 cents on it. And yes, the two are related, but in some ways they aren't. And I want to elaborate on some of my thoughts. Some folks have been asking me this question over the years, and I thought it'd be fun to make a video. So let's get into this. So is there a direct correlation between people who are good at competition and people who have been in combat? That seems to be a really common misnomer that people have, is that if someone's good at competition, they should obviously be good at fighting, getting in gunfights or being in a war or something like that. Also, it goes the other way. Someone's a veteran, they've been to combat, maybe they've been on a deployment or two or something, and they come back, and some of them have an inflated ego and think that they don't ever have to work on gun skills ever again, or gun handling, or because they survived a year or two in combat, that they know everything about guns and or shooting or whatever, and that anything that a civilian says about shooting or competition or whatever is null and void because they haven't experienced combat. The two are closely related in some ways, but I think the biggest difference between the feeling of being in competition and the feeling of being involved in warfare is that in war, there's no time off, there's no timer, there's no time out, there's no rules. It's a very different environment where, you're constantly having to be vigilant. You can never have this mode of complacency that could ever exist when you're in combat. You don't know when the enemy is going to attack you. You don't know where they are. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what method they're going to use to try to attack you. And you have to be ready for anything at all times. And that carries a certain burden of stress and discomfort. And it really does affect a person mentally in a very, very different way. A competitor, okay, in between sessions, they can, sit down and check their gear and have a drink and hang out with their buddies and trade stories on Instagram and talk to each other and chew the fat, whatever they want to do, eat lunch, go take their time, go to the bathroom, do whatever they're going to do. The only time they're really in, let's just say, a mode of basic stress is, the shot timer goes off and now you're under the clock, and it provides a, let's just say, a stimulus for you to mentally kind of get in the zone of, hey, I'm competing here. I'm trying to beat this person's time. I'm trying to shoot better than all my other competitors. But your other competitors are not trying to shoot you, okay? They're not trying to kill you. They're, if you don't win in a three-gun competition, it's not like you're going to die that day, okay? You can go on and improve your skill set and live to fight another day. It's not like the loser dies, okay? In combat, it's not so much. You don't know who you're going up against. You don't know their skill level. You don't know who they are, what they know, what they don't know. All you know is you have to react to a bad situation and hope that you're going to come out on top. And all wars are different in terms of what they do to veterans that survive these wars after they come home, and the way that they, it changes their mindset as a person. I know a few people in my family are Vietnam veterans, and they had to experience a completely different war. And it depends on what time you were in Vietnam as to what type of war you got. If you were there early, you got a very different experience than being there later, and so on and so forth. Depends if you were in the north part of the country, the south part of the country. Same can go for Afghanistan. What part of Afghanistan were you in? What unit were you with? What year were you there? Right? Depending on what year you were in country, in Afghanistan or Iraq or Vietnam or Korea or whatever, is going to determine how, what your war was for you. And that war is different for every person. And look at what's going on in Ukraine right now. The Russians and the Ukrainians have been going at it a couple of years now, and it's getting ugly, and it's continued to get ugly, and the body count has continued to rise. Now, I'm not going to get into politics here and talk about all of that, but the point is, every war is different, and every soldier experiences that war in his own unique way, his or her own unique way, and they're going to come home with, with a completely different mindset as to how they live out the rest of their lives based on what those events folded out in that particular war. Whether they were there a year or a month or 10 years, it doesn't matter. It still changes your mindset in the same way. Watching doorways, not sitting in a restaurant with your back to the door, making sure you can get to your gun when you're sitting in a restaurant, making sure that you can see everybody. Those things, don't come naturally. They are a conditioned response that comes from being in a situation of people trying to kill you, or at least thinking that they're going to kill you, knowing that the reality is that they could come for you at any minute and they could potentially take your life from you. A person deals with a lot of difficult things. I mean, imagine being a 19-year-old kid and, someone in your platoon gets wounded really bad, or worse, someone dies, loses an arm, loses a leg. You have to, pick up your friend's dead body, or recover a body from a burning vehicle, or you kill an enemy combatant. Whatever the case may be, these young folks, they experience a lot of traumatic things very young in life and warfare that changes them in a very unique way that competition will never touch. Now, is that to say that your average veteran off the street that was involved in a few wars, could they just go sit in on a 3-gun competition and clear the entire stage and beat everybody on the first try? Probably not. So I think that another sort of misconception about, let's say, competition versus veterans and combat and all that sort of stuff is that people tend to associate, being a veteran with just, oh, you must be a really good shot, you must be really, and that, yeah, there are a lot of vets that are really great shooters. I mean, a lot of really natural shooters that I've met, a lot of them are military veterans, a lot of them have some experience in the sandbox. Now, is that to say that that gun handling skills are all there is that come into play? No, it is not only gun handling. I would say that, being in combat is probably very little actual gunplay, and 90% of it is this mental, psychological terror, this existential dread that is just in the air at every moment. And very little of it is actually about guns. And I think that with 3-gun competition, let's just use 3-gun as an example, some sort of competitive sport in the shooting world, such as 3-gun. 3-gun is about shooting. You're going in, you're going to shoot, the stage is there. Many times you can walk the stage, plan in your head how you're going to run it. And at that point, it really just becomes, all right, how much faster can I do it than someone else? How much more accurate can I shoot, and how much faster can I shoot than everyone around me? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You're proving your prowess as a marksman. You're proving your speed as an athlete. Okay, all of these things come into play. That's not a problem. Does that say that there are 3-gun competitors that are far better shots than people in the military currently now? Absolutely. I would say that in terms of just when you look at it strictly from a standpoint of gun handling, yes, many 3-gun competitors are far more proficient at handling guns than your average military soldier who is still serving, even in a combat unit, a line unit, an infantry unit. Now, is that to say that those guys don't still get a lot of training in? Yeah, they get some decent training. Of course, your Delta guys and Special Forces and Rangers are going to have a lot different type of ammo allotment and a lot different training allotment to them, and they can do much more advanced and more specific training more often, all right, and log a lot more rounds. So yeah, a Delta guy or a Ranger or someone like that, or Special Forces, if you grab one of those guys out of an SF unit or a Ranger unit or out of the Delta unit and threw them into a 3-gun competition, they would probably cream everybody, okay? Because those guys run guns a lot. Guns are a big part, running guns are a big part of those types of MOSs within the military, okay? There's a big difference between someone who's a Delta operator who's been in there for 10 years and a guy who is a communications person or a cook. I mean, don't get me wrong, cooks need to shoot, commo guys need to shoot, medics need to shoot, but the training that an operator level, different tier of soldier is going to receive in terms of combat arms training is going to be much different than someone who's a cook or a medic or a radio operator or even an artilleryman. Okay, even in my situation, I was an 11 Charlie, which is a mortarman. Yeah, my focus is going to be on operating mortars because that's my job. Now, do I know my way around small arms? Of course I do. I know how to run the M2 and 240 Bravo, and I know how to run ARs and M9s and shotguns and every type of small arm you could ever think of, AT4s and everything. The point is, I digress. The point is that yes, competition does breed good handling skills with guns. It makes you faster, more competent. It makes you better at handling your firearms and gives you better skills. It improves your skill set, which is great. But I think the big difference that people need to kind of keep in the back of their mind is that war is a really disastrously terrible, screwed up thing that is far more encompassing than strictly just handling guns. And I think that the two get correlated to each other as, that, I don't know, in war, you're just an infantry guy just shooting fish in a barrel, like you see the movies. And all you see in a movie about Vietnam is them making contact and shooting it out with the NVA in the jungle. And of course, gunfights happen, but how long does a gunfight not happen? How many patrols go out and never saw a single enemy soldier? How many weeks did they not fire a shot in anger, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose? It's those weeks in between the crap that are what really drives a person absolutely insane and keeps them on the edge of their seat and keeps them in an absolute state of terror. And those, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's what separates the men from the boys. Now, could you take a competitor and put them in that environment and they excel? Well, if they do make contact with the enemy, sure, their gun handling skills are going to be very good and hopefully they'll come out on top, but those things do not directly correlate to each other. Having a conditioned response and having the ability to use violence as a tool in the heat of the moment to save your life is a far different concept than simply just being able to clear a stage faster than someone to your left or right and then go have a beer and burger at the freaking restaurant after the fact and go watch a movie with your girlfriend later. Is a completely different thing. And I'm not saying that that's not a good skill to have. Hey, I got a lot of respect for good three-gun competitors, but there's a reason that I've never really been one for competition so much. I mean, I feel like my gun handling skills are pretty good. I shoot really well, and for me, like, shooting is just one sort of facet of the overall survivability mode that I have in my mind. I mean, I want to make sure I'm good with medical stuff. I want to make sure I can handle some commo. My survival skills, building shelters, building fires. For me, I look at survival as an all-encompassing concept that guns are only a mere part of, not the only star of the show. I'm going to spend just as much time building out my medical kit as I am, kitting out my rifle for a potential situation. So just keep that in mind, is that you have to have a well-rounded mindset of survivability that goes beyond simply just training with your guns. I mean, guns are the last resort as a civilian in a situation. A gun is the last thing that you want to try to use. You want to try to use your verbal judo. You want to try to escape the situation. You want to try to have the mindset of not putting yourself in a situation to need your gun in the first place. Keep that in mind. Thank you so much for watching. Many more videos on the way. I hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.